Commander Vex stood tall on the bridge of his warship, the Eternal Dominion. His purple scales gleamed under the soft lights as he looked at the large screen showing a small blue planet. This was his 43rd conquest. Just another primitive world that would soon bow before the Zolthron Collective. The Zolthrons had been conquering worlds for 300 years. Their method was simple and effective. Find a planet with intelligent life, send a warning message, attack before the natives could organize a defense. It worked every single time. Vex pulled up the report on his screen. The planet was called Earth by its inhabitants. The species called themselves humans. They were spread across one world, divided into nearly 200 different nations. They fought among themselves constantly. They had barely started exploring their own solar system. Their technology was basic. Their weapons were crude, perfect prey. Lieutenant Cray approached with a data pad. "Commander, the ultimatum is ready for transmission." Vex nodded without looking up. The ultimatum was always the same. Surrender within 72 hours or face complete destruction. Most species surrendered immediately. The few who fought back never lasted more than a day or two. "Send it on all frequencies," Vex ordered. "Make sure every human on that planet receives our message." The message was sent. It traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching Earth in minutes. Every television, every computer, every phone on the planet suddenly displayed the same message. The Zolthron Empire demanded immediate surrender. Any resistance would result in the extinction of the human race. On Earth, Colonel Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in the North American Aerospace Defense Command Center when alarms started blaring. Every screen in the facility showed the alien message. His coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Within an hour, world leaders were gathered in an emergency session. Some wanted to negotiate, some wanted to fight, some wanted to hide and hope the aliens would leave. The debate was fierce and loud, but in a quiet office deep in the Pentagon, General Linda Hayes was not debating. She was opening a file that had been locked away for 60 years. The file was marked with a single word, Omega. She read through the pages quickly. Her expression never changed, but her hands gripped the paper a little tighter with each page. When she finished, she picked up a red phone that connected to only 3 places in the world. The first call went to the International Space Defense Initiative, an organization most people thought only tracked asteroids. The second call went to the Global Defense Research Agency, which officially studied peaceful space exploration. The third call went to a small cabin in Montana, where a man named Danny Cooper lived alone in the woods. Danny picked up on the first ring. He had been waiting for this call for 20 years. "It's time?" he asked. "It's time," Linda confirmed. Danny looked around his cabin one last time. The peaceful life of a retired Marine was over. "I'll be there in 12 hours. Linda made 3 more calls. Each person she spoke to said the same thing. They had been waiting. They were ready. High above Earth, the Zolthron fleet moved closer. 47 warships, each the size of a small city, arranged in perfect formation. Their sensors swept the planet and surrounding space. They detected satellites, a few space stations, and panicked communications from the surface. Nothing dangerous. Nothing unusual. Commander Vex smiled. This would be easier than he thought. What his sensors did not detect were the 300 platforms floating in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. They had been there for 40 years, hidden by technology the Zolthrons had never seen. Each platform was armed with weapons that could throw metal at speeds close to the speed of light. The sensors also missed the 4 massive shipyards on the far side of Earth's moon. The side that never faced the planet. The side where humanity had been building warships in secret since 1962. And the sensors completely failed to notice that every nation on Earth, despite their public conflicts, had been working together on one single project for decades. A unified defense force, a hidden military, a secret that 7 billion people had somehow managed to keep. The Zolthrons had made their first mistake. They assumed humans would act like every other species they had conquered, scared, disorganized, weak. They were about to learn that humans were very good at acting, and even better at keeping secrets. In the NORAD command center, Jake watched the alien fleet on his screens. They were moving slowly, confidently. They had no idea what was waiting for them. A young officer approached him. "Colonel, should we power up the defense grid?" Jake shook his head. "Not yet. Let them get closer. Let them think they've already won. Around the world, hidden bases were coming to life. Pilots were climbing into cockpits of fighters that had never been seen by civilian eyes. Soldiers were boarding ships that officially did not exist. Scientists were powering up weapons that had been tested in the deepest oceans and the darkest reaches of space. The United Nations held a public session where leaders made speeches about peace and negotiation. Cameras broadcast their worried faces to the world. It looked like humanity was scared and unprepared. But in a bunker 3 miles below the UN building, military commanders from every nation sat around a table. They were not scared. They were not unprepared. They were watching the alien fleet and calculating firing solutions. General Linda Hayes arrived at the command center 20 hours after the alien message. She walked past rows of screens showing every military asset humanity possessed. Weapons that the public thought were experimental were actually battle-ready. Ships that the public thought were satellites were actually warships. Technology that the public thought was science fiction was actually science fact. She took her position at the main command console. Around her, the most skilled military minds on Earth waited for orders. "Status report," she said calmly. "All stealth platforms are online and ready," one officer reported. "The lunar shipyards have completed final preparations. All defense grids are charged and standing by. Civilian evacuation? Underground shelters are at 60% capacity and rising. We estimate 90% of major population centers will be secured within 48 hours. Linda nodded. Everything was going according to plan. A plan that had been created by the brightest minds of the Cold War era. A plan that assumed one day humanity would face a threat from beyond Earth. A plan that required nations who hated each other to work together in absolute secrecy. It had taken decades. It had cost trillions of dollars. It had required lies upon lies upon lies, but it had worked. The Zolthran fleet was now past Mars, entering the inner solar system. They were sending out scout drones, mapping Earth's defenses. The drones saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Old satellites, primitive missiles, nothing that could threaten a Zolthran warship. Commander Vex reviewed the scout reports and laughed. They have nothing. Prepare to enter orbit around their planet. Once we're in position, we'll demonstrate our power by destroying one of their cities. That usually convinces them to surrender quickly. Lieutenant Cray hesitated. Commander, there's something odd about their communications. They seem too calm. Vex waved a clawed hand dismissively. They're in shock. It's normal. Every species goes through the same emotions. Disbelief, fear, acceptance. By tomorrow, they'll be begging us to spare them. But Cray was right to be worried. The human communications were too calm, too organized. It was not the chaos of a civilization facing extinction. It was the quiet efficiency of a military preparing for battle. In the Montana cabin, Danny Cooper packed a small bag. He took one last look at the peaceful mountains outside his window. He had spent 20 years trying to forget the things he had done in the service of his country. Now he would have to remember it all. His phone rang again. It was Linda. Danny, I need you to tell me I'm making the right choice. He understood what she was really asking. The plan they were about to execute was brutal. It left no room for mercy. It required them to do things that would haunt them forever. Linda, you remember what happened to the 26 species the Zolthrans conquered before us? Yes, slavery, genocide, extinction, that's what they do. That's what they'll do to us if we give them the chance. He paused. You're making the only choice. The hard choice. The necessary choice. Linda was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you." She hung up and turned to her command staff. All units are to maintain stealth protocols until my direct order. We let them get close. We let them feel safe. And then we show them who we really are. The trap was set. The prey was walking in. And soon the Zolthrans would learn that on Earth humans were not the prey. They were the predators. The Zolthran fleet stopped just beyond the moon's orbit. Commander Vex expected silence or perhaps desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, he received a formal communication from someone who introduced himself as Secretary General Martinez of the United Nations. The message was polite, almost friendly. Martinez spoke slowly and clearly, as if talking to a respected colleague rather than an invading force. He requested a meeting to discuss terms of Earth's surrender. He suggested that the Zolthrans send a diplomatic ship to negotiate the details. After all, civilized species should talk before fighting. Vex found the message amusing. Civilized. These primitives used that word as if they understood what it meant. But military protocol required him to accept diplomatic requests. Every species deserved a chance to surrender with dignity, even if they would end up as slaves anyway. "Send the diplomatic cruiser," Vex ordered. "Ambassador Thex will handle the negotiations. It should take less than an hour to finalize their surrender." The Zolthron diplomatic ship was smaller than the warships, but still impressive. It moved toward Earth, its sensors constantly scanning for threats. The scans showed primitive missiles that could barely scratch Zolthron shields, a few defense satellites with old-style weapons. Nothing concerning. What the scans did not show were the 6 fighters that launched from a hidden base deep in Earth's ocean. The fighters were small and sleek, designed to look like expensive civilian craft on any scan. They moved to escort the Zolthron ship, guiding it toward a meeting point. The meeting place was a space station that orbited Earth. To the Zolthrons, it looked exactly like what a rich, primitive species would build: fancy windows, decorative lights, probably a waste of resources on comfort rather than function. Inside the station, Ambassador Thex walked through hallways that seemed too large and too decorated. Humans apparently cared about appearance, another sign of a weak species. Strong species built for efficiency, not beauty. He entered a conference room where 2 humans waited. The first was Secretary General Martinez, an older man with gray hair and an expensive suit. He smiled and offered his hand in the human greeting. Thex ignored it. The second human wore a military uniform covered in colorful ribbons and medals. She introduced herself as Admiral Karen Wells. Her face showed no emotion. Her eyes were cold and calculating. Martinez gestured to comfortable chairs. "Please, Ambassador, sit. Can we offer you refreshment?" Thex sat but ignored the offer. "Let us not waste time with pleasantries. You know why I am here. Your planet will surrender. We will take what we need. Your people will serve the collective. This can happen peacefully or violently. The choice is yours." Martinez nodded slowly as if considering the options. "I see, and if we refuse? Then your cities burn. Your population is reduced by 90%. The survivors serve anyway, but with much less pleasant conditions." Thex spoke without emotion. He had given this speech 42 times before. "How many worlds have you conquered, Ambassador?" Admiral Wells asked suddenly. 26 species across 34 planets, Thex replied with pride. "The collective is vast and powerful." Wells looked at Martinez. "Did you hear that? 26 species. All of them surrendered or were destroyed." Martinez sighed deeply. "Yes, I heard." He looked tired suddenly. "Ambassador Thex, I want to show you something before we continue. Is that acceptable?" Thex made a gesture that meant agreement in Zolthran culture. Admiral Wells picked up a small device from the table. It looked like a simple tablet computer. She pressed a single button. In that moment, everything changed. Throughout the solar system, 300 platforms dropped their stealth fields. They appeared on every Zolthron sensor simultaneously. The platforms were not satellites. They were weapons. Big weapons. Each one was armed with railguns that could throw metal projectiles at incredible speeds. On the far side of Earth's moon, 4 massive shipyards powered up. Their huge doors opened, revealing ships inside. 28 warships, each one sleek and deadly-looking. They were not as large as Zolthran dreadnoughts, but their design was aggressive and completely unknown. On Earth itself, 6 enormous defense grids came online. Their energy signatures blazed across every scanner. Each grid could generate enough power to supply a major city. All that power was aimed at the sky. Ambassador Thex stared at his personal screen as data poured in. His scales turned from deep purple to almost white. His breathing became rapid and shallow. What is this?" he managed to whisper. Martinez leaned forward. His friendly expression was gone, replaced by something hard and cold. "This is who we really are, Ambassador. You asked about civilized species. Let me tell you about humans. We discovered atomic power before we left our planet. We split atoms and used them as weapons against each other. We turned our own world into a testing ground for weapons of mass destruction." He paused, letting that sink in. "We spent 10,000 years fighting wars, against animals, against nature, and mostly against each other. We've perfected one skill above everything else, Ambassador. We're really, really good at war." Admiral Wells added, "Your fleet is sitting in a kill zone right now. Those platforms in the asteroid belt can fire on your position within seconds. Our ships can reach you in under 10 minutes, and our defense grids can target any ship in near-Earth orbit. She smiled, but it was not friendly. Your fleet has two choices, Ambassador. Leave now or learn firsthand why predators don't hunt humans. Thex tried to speak, but his voice would not work. His translator device struggled with his panicked breathing. Finally, he managed, "You deceived us. This is dishonorable. You pretended to be weak," Martinez laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Ambassador, we wrote entire books about deception. One of them is called The Art of War. It was written 3,000 years ago by a general named Sun Tzu. The first lesson in that book is this: appear weak when you are strong." "We've been watching you," Wells continued. "Your empire has a pattern. Find a weak target, overwhelm them quickly, move on. You've never fought someone who fought back intelligently. You've never faced an enemy who prepared for you." She stood up, walking closer to Thex. "We've been preparing for species like yours since we first looked at the stars. We knew something was out there. We knew it might be hostile, so we got ready." Thex looked at his screen again. More data was coming in. Hidden installations were revealing themselves all over the solar system. His scanners had missed hundreds of defensive positions. Earth's military was not primitive. It was hidden. Carefully, cleverly hidden. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been preparing?" 63 years, Martinez answered. "Since 1962, every nation on our planet has contributed to a secret defense force. We've spent trillions of dollars. We've built weapons in secret. We've tested them where no one could see. And we've kept it all hidden from our own people." Wells checked her tablet. "Commander Vex is receiving our sensor data right now. He's seeing what you're seeing. I estimate he's trying to decide whether to attack or retreat." She looked directly at Thex. "Tell him something for me. Tell him that if he attacks, we'll show him what happened to the last species that attacked Earth." "What species?" Thex asked. "You said you've never had contact before." Martinez smiled grimly. "We were that species, Ambassador. We attacked ourselves. For thousands of years, we fought and killed each other. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire world. We came very close to making ourselves extinct." He leaned closer. "We survived by learning to be better killers than anything else on our planet. And then we looked at the stars and realized we needed to be better than anything out there too." A communication came through to Thex's device. It was Commander Vex, and his voice was shaking with rage. "Ambassador, return to the fleet immediately. These primitives have made fools of us. We will destroy them all." Thex looked at the two humans. "My commander has ordered an attack." Wells nodded calmly. "We expected that. Pride is often stronger than wisdom." She pressed another button on her tablet. In space, one of the weapons platforms in the asteroid belt adjusted its aim. It locked onto a piece of space debris, a dead satellite that had been drifting for years. The railgun fired. The projectile crossed 1,000,000 kilometers in seconds and hit the satellite dead center. The satellite vaporized. The explosion was visible from Earth. "That was a warning shot," Wells said. "We could have aimed at your ship. We could have aimed at Commander Vex's flagship. We didn't because, despite what you think, we prefer not to kill if we don't have to." Her expression hardened. "But if your commander attacks, we will respond with everything we have. And Ambassador, you need to understand something important. We don't fight wars to win territory or resources. When humans fight for survival, we fight to completely destroy the enemy. No half measures, no mercy. Total annihilation." Martinez stood up. "You have 1 hour to return to your fleet and leave this solar system. If you're still here after that, we'll assume you've chosen war. And Ambassador, I promise you, war with humanity is not something your empire is ready for." Thex stood on shaking legs. His mind was racing, trying to process everything. The Zolthrans had conquered 26 species. They had been unstoppable for 3 centuries. And now these humans, these supposedly primitive creatures, were threatening them. The worst part was that Thex believed them. Commander Vex gave the order he never thought he would give. Retreat. The word tasted bitter, but survival was more important than pride. The Eternal Dominion and 29 other surviving Zolthron ships powered up their faster-than-light engines. "Jump in 30 seconds, the navigator announced. Around the solar system, every Zolthran ship prepared to escape. They would leave, regroup, and return with 500 ships instead of 50. The humans had won this battle, but the Zolthrans would win the war. 28 seconds later, every Zolthron engine went dead. "What happened?" Vex demanded. "The faster-than-light drives are offline," the engineer reported, panic in his voice. All of them. Every ship in the fleet. Something is blocking the quantum field. We need to jump. That's impossible. It's happening, Commander. On the human ship Valkyrie, Lieutenant Sarah Price monitored a special device. It was experimental technology, something that had been theoretical until 6 months ago, a faster-than-light jamming field. It disrupted the quantum mechanics that made faster-than-light travel possible. The device had a range of 1 light hour. It used enough power to run a small city, and it had just trapped the entire Zolthran fleet. Cage is active and stable, Sarah reported. They're not going anywhere. Admiral Wells's face appeared on every human command screen. Her expression showed no mercy. All vessels, this is Wells. The enemy tried to flee. That means they understand they're beaten, but we cannot let them escape. If even one ship returns to their empire, they'll come back with thousands. Protocol Omega final phase, no survivors. There was a moment of silence across all the human ships. The order was clear, not prisoners, not surrender. Complete annihilation. One by one, every ship captain acknowledged the order. They understood why it was necessary. They understood what would happen if the Zolthrons went home and told their empire about humanity's weapons. Scott Hayes looked at his crew, young men and women who had trained for years for this moment. They had known this might happen. They had known they might have to do something terrible to save their world. You heard the Admiral, Scott said quietly. This stops being a battle now. It becomes a hunt. We're going to destroy every enemy ship, no exceptions. The human fleet reorganized. They formed hunter-killer groups, 6 ships per target. They moved with the precision of wolves surrounding wounded prey. The Zolthrans fought desperately. They were skilled warriors. They were brave, but they were trapped and outmatched. A Zolthran cruiser called Sharp Talon tried to hide behind Earth's moon, powering down all systems to avoid detection. Captain Frank Miller found it using thermal scanners that detected the heat from its engines. He fired missiles that curved around the moon and struck the hidden ship. The Sharp Talon exploded, its crew dying without ever seeing their killer. A destroyer named Claw of Justice attempted to use the debris field from earlier in the battle as cover. Commander Lisa Gray commanded 3 human ships in a coordinated attack. They came from different angles, firing through the debris. The destroyer had nowhere to hide. It died in a crossfire, torn apart by rounds that came from every direction. The Eternal Dominion, the largest and most powerful ship in the Zolthran fleet, made a final stand near Mars. Commander Vex knew he was going to die. He knew his fleet was going to die, but he had one last chance to hurt the humans. He opened a communication on all frequencies. Humans, I offer you information about our empire. I offer you technology. I offer you anything you want. Just let us live, please. In human military history, there were many examples of defeated enemies begging for mercy. Sometimes that mercy was given. Sometimes warriors found honor in sparing a beaten foe. But this was not that kind of war. Scott brought the Valkyrie close to the Eternal Dominion. Close enough that he could see the bridge through his view screen. He could see Commander Vex standing there, proud warrior reduced to begging for his life. For a moment, Scott felt something that might have been pity. Then he remembered what the Zolthrons did to the 26 species they had conquered. Slavery, genocide, extinction. Target their bridge, Scott ordered, his voice completely emotionless. End it quickly! The railgun fired once. A single round traveling at tremendous speed. It punched through the Eternal Dominion's weakened shields and vaporized the bridge. Commander Vex and everyone in that room simply ceased to exist. The great warship drifted in space, lifeless, its command structure destroyed. Secondary explosions began rippling through its hull. Target destroyed, Scott reported. All ships continue the mission. The hunt continued for 8 more hours. One by one, every Zolthran ship was found and destroyed. Some fought to the end. Some tried to surrender. Some just drifted, their crews knowing death was coming. The result was always the same. Destruction. No survivors. No prisoners. No mercy. When it was finally over, 47 Zolthran warships were nothing but debris. Thousands of alien warriors were dead. An entire fleet had been erased from existence. The human fleet had lost 6 ships. Hundreds of human soldiers had died. But they had won completely and absolutely. In the NORAD command center, General Linda Hayes watched the tactical display as the last red icon disappeared. Every threat was eliminated. Every enemy was dead. "Ma'am," an officer said carefully, "there's a lot of debris out there. Intact technology we could study. Zoltran computers, weapon systems, shield generators. It could advance our technology by decades." Linda considered that. The temptation was strong. Alien technology could help humanity reach the stars faster. But it was also evidence. Proof that humanity was dangerous. "No," she said firmly. "Burn it, all of it. I want every piece of wreckage larger than a basketball completely destroyed. Leave nothing for the Zoltran Empire to find except empty space." The officer looked surprised but nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Over the next 6 hours, human ships systematically destroyed every piece of debris. They used their weapons to vaporize metal. They used heat to melt technology. They left nothing behind but scattered atoms and fading radiation. When they were done, there was no evidence that a battle had ever happened. 3 days after the battle, Danny Cooper arrived at Linda's office. The retired Marine had been monitoring everything from his cabin, watching through classified channels. He walked in without knocking and sat down. "You called me in because you need someone to tell you it was the right decision," Danny said bluntly. "Someone who's made the same kind of choices." Linda nodded slowly. 47 ships, thousands of beings. "We killed them all, Danny. We hunted down the ones trying to surrender. We destroyed the ones begging for mercy. I gave the order to commit mass murder, and I need to know I didn't turn us into monsters." Danny was quiet for a long moment. He had fought in wars that most people had forgotten. He had made decisions that still haunted him decades later. He understood what Linda was feeling. "General, do you know what the Zolthrons have done to the species they conquered?" he finally asked. "Yes. Slavery. Forced labor. Some species they wiped out completely when they resisted. 26 different civilizations destroyed or enslaved." Danny leaned forward. "You didn't start this war, they did. You didn't make them come here. They chose to attack us, and you ended it the only way that keeps Earth safe. But the ones who surrendered would have gone home and told their empire everything about our weapons, our tactics, our strength, and then we'd be facing 1,000 ships instead of 50. Danny's voice was hard. "You made the choice that saved 7 billion human lives. That's not murder, General. That's survival." Linda closed her eyes. "When their empire comes looking for their missing fleet, they'll find nothing. Just like we planned. They'll search and wonder and fear will keep them away better than any weapon we could build." "You really believe that?" "I know that." Danny stood up. "Linda, you're going to carry this weight for the rest of your life. Every person who gave that order, every pilot who fired on a surrendering ship, every captain who hunted down fleeing enemies. We're all going to carry it. That's the price of protecting home. We pay it so everyone else doesn't have to." Linda opened her eyes and looked at him. "How do you live with it? You remember why you did it. You remember the people you saved, and you never ever forget that the alternative would have been worse." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "The Zolthrans came here planning to enslave or kill every human on Earth. Instead, they found out that humans are the most dangerous species they've ever encountered. That message will spread through their empire, and maybe, just maybe, they'll decide Earth is too dangerous to attack." After he left, Linda sat alone in her office for a long time. Outside her window, Earth continued its orbit. Cities functioned normally. People went to work, went to school, lived their lives. They knew there had been an alien threat. They knew it had been dealt with, but they did not know the cost. They did not know that their protectors had become killers to save them. They did not know that somewhere in the debris field, pieces of ships floated through space, evidence of a battle that officially never happened. That burden would fall on the shoulders of people like Linda, like Scott, like every crew member who had fired weapons at fleeing ships. They would carry the weight of that terrible, necessary decision, because that was what warriors did. They made the hard choices. They did the terrible things. The Zoltran fleet moved into attack formation. 47 massive warships arranged themselves in a triangle pattern, energy shields glowing at maximum power, their weapons charged, ready to rain destruction on the planet below. Commander Vex felt confident again. Yes, the humans had surprised them with hidden weapons, but the mathematics were clear. 47 Zoltran capital ships against 28 human ships. Superior numbers? Superior firepower. The computers calculated a 98% chance of victory. The computers were wrong. Lieutenant Commander Scott Hayes commanded the human warship Valkyrie. He sat in the captain's chair watching the enemy fleet approach on his main screen. His hands were steady. His voice was calm. Scott came from a military family. His great-grandfather had fought in a war almost 200 years ago, storming beaches under enemy fire. His grandmother had been a fighter pilot in conflicts that most history books barely mentioned. His father had been a soldier in 3 different wars. Violence and survival were in his blood, passed down through generations. Admiral Wells's voice came through every ship's communication system. All ships, this is Wells. Execute Protocol Omega. Authorization code, Hayes 779er. Show them who we are, Scott smiled. Protocol Omega. The plan that humanity's best military minds had created over decades. Every lesson learned from thousands of years of war, refined and perfected. Every trick, every strategy, every brutal truth about combat. You heard the Admiral, Scott told his crew. Time to teach these aliens what happens when you threaten Earth. Helm, execute attack pattern Morrison 3. The human fleet scattered. To the Zolthrons, it looked like panic. Their computers analyzed the movement and concluded the enemy was breaking formation, running scared. Several Zolthron ships broke from the main group to chase individual human ships. Lieutenant Cray, watching from the Eternal Dominion, felt uneasy. Commander, their movement pattern seems deliberate. I recommend we maintain formation. Nonsense, Vex snapped. They're fleeing. Pursue and destroy. The Zolthron fleet spread out, chasing the scattering human ships. It was exactly what the humans wanted. The trap closed. The weapons platforms in the asteroid belt fired. But they did not aim at the Zolthron ships. Instead, they targeted rocks and debris in the asteroid field. Thousands of tons of stone and metal accelerated to devastating speeds, creating a massive debris field directly in the path of the Zolthron fleet. The Zolthron ships had to slow down and bunch together to navigate through the debris. Their perfect formation collapsed. Ships crowded close to each other, limiting their ability to maneuver. That was when the human warships turned around and attacked. The Valkyrie's main guns opened fire. The rounds were not like anything the Zolthrons had encountered. They were shaped nuclear charges, each one a tiny sun that exploded with tremendous force. The first 3 rounds hit a Zolthron cruiser's shields, creating brilliant flashes of light. The shields held, but barely. Engineering, push the reactors to maximum, Scott ordered. Weapons continuous fire. Don't give them time to recover. The Valkyrie kept firing. Round after round slammed into the same Zolthron cruiser. The shields flickered, weakened, and finally collapsed. The next round punched through the ship's armor and detonated inside. The Zolthron cruiser exploded, pieces of it spinning away into space. First kill, Scott's weapons officer reported calmly. On the Eternal Dominion, Commander Vex watched in horror as the tactical display showed one of his ships destroyed. Impossible. Human weapons should not be that powerful. Return fire, he screamed.
Kill them all!
The Zolthron energy beams lashed out, bright blue streaks that could melt through most armor. They hit the Valkyrie and 2 other human ships. The beams were powerful, devastating weapons that had destroyed countless enemy vessels. But the human ships did not die. Their armor held, some kind of advanced alloy that spread the heat and energy across the entire hull. The ships took damage, yes, but they kept fighting. Captain Nicole Ross commanded a human ship called Hammer. She brought her vessel alongside a Zolthron dreadnought, close enough that the 2 ships were almost touching. At point-blank range, she fired a special weapon, a magnetic accelerator that threw tungsten rods at incredible speeds. The Zolthron ship's shields lasted 3 seconds. The armor lasted 2 seconds more. The tungsten rods punched through the hull like paper, tearing massive holes in the ship's structure. Atmosphere vented into space. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship's interior. The dreadnought broke apart, its back snapped in half. Target destroyed, Nicole reported, moving to next engagement. But the real nightmare for the Zolthrons came from the small fighters. Human pilots in one-man craft attacked the much larger Zolthron ships like angry insects stinging a bear. Major Chris Turner led a squadron of 6 fighters against a Zolthron carrier. The huge ship's defensive guns tracked the fighters, firing thousands of rounds per second. By all logic, the fighters should have been destroyed instantly. But Chris and his pilots did not fly like machines. They flew with instinct and intuition. They moved unpredictably, never staying in one place, never following a pattern. The computer-controlled Zolthron guns could not predict where they would be. "Stay loose," Chris called to his squadron. Don't think, just react. Make them chase ghosts. The 6 fighters weaved through the defensive fire like dancers. One pilot pulled a maneuver that should have torn her fighter apart from the G-forces. Another flew so close to the carrier's hull that his wing actually scraped the metal. A third did a backwards loop that made no tactical sense but somehow kept him alive. They reached the carrier's launch bay and fired missiles. The Zolthrons shot down 4 missiles. 2 got through. They penetrated deep into the carrier before exploding. Suddenly, the huge ship was bleeding atmosphere and fighter craft, its internal structure compromised. All across the battlefield, the same pattern repeated. Human ships fighting with aggression and creativity against Zolthron ships that followed predictable patterns. Human pilots making split-second decisions against Zolthron computers that could only calculate probabilities. The Zolthrons had better technology in some ways. Their energy shields were more advanced. Their weapons were more powerful. But they had one fatal weakness: they fought like they always fought. They followed doctrine. They did what the computers told them to do. Humans did not. Humans adapted. Humans improvised. And most importantly, humans were not trying to capture ships or territory. They were trying to kill. A Zolthron destroyer tried to retreat toward the edge of the battle. Captain Frank Miller, commanding a human ship called Dark Star, hunted it down. He used Earth's shadow to mask his approach, then fired at the destroyer's engines. The Zolthron ship was crippled, drifting helplessly. Miller did not take prisoners. He fired again, destroying the helpless ship. Commander Lisa Gray coordinated 3 human ships in a complex maneuver. They surrounded a Zolthron battlecruiser and fired from 3 different angles simultaneously. The cruiser's shields could not defend against attacks from multiple directions. The ship was torn apart by concentrated fire. Every human captain understood the mission. This was not a battle to win territory. This was not a fight to capture resources. This was pure survival. The Zolthrons had to be stopped completely, totally, without mercy. Because if even one ship escaped, it would return with reinforcements. On the Eternal Dominion, Lieutenant Cray watched the tactical display with growing fear. 10 Zolthron ships were destroyed. 15 were damaged. The human fleet had taken losses too, but they kept fighting with intensity that seemed impossible. "Commander," Cray said quietly, "they're not fighting to win. They're fighting to kill. Every shot is aimed at critical systems. Every maneuver is designed for maximum damage. They're not soldiers. They're murderers." Vex stared at the screen. Cray was right. The humans were not fighting like any species the Zolthrons had encountered. Most species fought defensively, trying to preserve their forces. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose, because they did not. This was their home. These were their families, and they would rather die than surrender. A human fighter screamed past the Eternal Dominion's bridge, so close that Vex could see the pilot inside. Just for a moment their eyes met. The human pilot smiled. Actually smiled. Then the fighter fired missiles at the Dominion's sensor array and was gone, disappearing into the chaos of battle. "Damage report." Vex shouted. "Primary sensors offline," an officer reported, switching to backups. But the backups were less effective. The Eternal Dominion was partially blind now, and somewhere in the confusion of battle, human ships were hunting them specifically. Scott Hayes brought the Valkyrie around for another attack run. His ship had taken damage. Hull breaches on 3 decks, shields at 40%. 2 of his main guns were offline, but his crew was still fighting. His ship was still flying. And the enemy was still dying. "Target the flagship," Scott ordered. "All remaining weapons. Fire everything we have." The Valkyrie and 4 other human ships concentrated their fire on the Eternal Dominion. Nuclear rounds, railgun slugs, missiles, and energy weapons all struck the massive ship within seconds of each other. The Dominion's shields flared bright, holding against the assault. But they weakened with each hit. Commander Vex felt his ship shake with each impact. 6 months passed. Earth returned to normal, or as normal as possible after facing an alien invasion. Most people knew only the basic facts. Aliens had threatened Earth, the military had responded, the aliens were gone. The details remained classified. Then the second fleet arrived. This Zolthron fleet was much larger than the first. Nearly 200 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Fleet Commander Zara had been sent to investigate why Commander Vex's fleet had disappeared. She expected to find a conquered world, or perhaps wreckage from a battle. Instead, she found nothing unusual. The star system looked peaceful. The blue planet orbited its yellow sun quietly. Satellites and space stations operated normally, as if nothing had ever happened. No debris, no distress signals, no evidence of any battle. 47 warships had simply vanished. Zara studied her sensor displays with growing confusion. Fleets did not just disappear. There should be something. Wreckage, radiation, bodies. But her scans showed nothing. On Earth, alarms sounded in the NORAD command center. General Linda Hayes, who had been expecting this moment for months, called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. "They're here," she announced. 200 ships this time. Recommendations? Admiral Karen Wells spoke first. "We can fight them. We've upgraded our weapons, improved our shields. The faster-than-light jammer is more powerful now. We could win." "At what cost?" Colonel Jake Morrison asked. "We lost 6 ships against 50. This fleet is 4 times larger. We might lose dozens of ships, hundreds or thousands of lives. And if we win, what happens when they send 1,000 ships next time?" Captain Nicole Ross, who had been promoted after the battle, offered a different idea. "What if we don't fight at all?" Everyone turned to look at her. "Explain," Linda ordered. Nicole brought up a star chart on the main screen. 6 months ago, we captured data from the Eternal Dominion before we destroyed it. Communication codes, navigation information, diplomatic protocols. What if we use that to negotiate instead of fight?" "You want to talk to them?" Admiral Wells asked, surprised. "After we killed their entire first fleet?" "I want to make them afraid," Nicole corrected. "We make contact on our terms. We show them just enough to make them understand we're dangerous but mysterious. We become the species they fear too much to attack." Danny Cooper, attending the meeting by video link, understood immediately. "You want to turn humanity into a legend, a story they tell to scare their children." Nicole nodded. "Exactly. We don't admit we destroyed the first fleet. We just hint that we know what happened. We demonstrate technology they can't explain. We make ourselves seem more advanced and more dangerous than we really are. The plan was risky. It required perfect execution. But it was also brilliant. Instead of fighting, humanity would use psychology. They would win by making the enemy too scared to attack. That's the most human strategy I've ever heard," Admiral Wells said with a slight smile. "We're going to lie, bluff, and manipulate our way to safety." Linda made her decision. "Do it. Captain Ross, you're in charge of the communication. Make them believe." 3 days later, Fleet Commander Zara received a transmission. It came through channels that should have been impossible for primitives to access. The voice spoke perfect Zolthran language with proper grammar and accent. The speaker identified herself only as the Earth speaker. "Fleet Commander Zara," the voice said calmly. "You are looking for your missing ships. We know what happened to them." Zara's scales prickled with surprise. "Who are you? Where is Commander Vex?" "Gone, along with his 47 vessels. But not by our hand." There was a pause, perfectly timed. "This solar system is protected, Commander. Not by us, but by others. Ancient ones, powerful ones. We are called humans, and we are merely their caretakers. We suggested to the protectors that your first fleet should be allowed to leave peacefully. They disagreed. We could not stop what happened next." Zara looked at her tactical officer, who was analyzing the transmission. "It's using quantum entanglement across multiple points in space simultaneously," the officer whispered. "That technology is centuries ahead of us. Whoever they are, their communications alone are far more advanced than ours." "Why are you telling me this?" Zara asked carefully. "Because the protectors have decided to allow you to live, to carry a message back to your empire. This system, this world called Earth, is not to be touched, ever. The price for trying is complete annihilation. Commander Vex learned this truth. We hope you are wiser than he was." Then, to prove the point, every stealth platform that humanity had hidden across the solar system dropped its concealment field for exactly 3 seconds. Just long enough for Zolthran sensors to detect them. just long enough to realize they were armed with weapons that made no logical sense. The platforms disappeared again, but the damage was done. "Commander," Zara's tactical officer said, his voice shaking. "Those weapons platforms. I can't identify the technology. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database. They're using physics we don't understand." Zara stared at the sensor data. Her mind raced through possibilities. An unknown advanced species protecting this system. Technology beyond Zolthron understanding. An entire fleet vanished without a trace. The human voice continued. "You have 1 hour to leave this star system, Commander. We suggest you use the time wisely. If you choose to attack, the protectors will respond. We cannot guarantee your survival. We cannot even guarantee you will die quickly." The transmission ended. Zara sat in her command chair thinking hard. Her orders were to investigate the missing fleet, but her orders also included staying alive and reporting back. If there really was an advanced species here, attacking would be suicide. Tactical. If we fought those platforms, what are our chances? The officer worked his computer for several minutes. "Unknown, Commander. Without understanding their weapons, I cannot calculate odds. But based on the energy signatures, each platform appears capable of destroying multiple ships. And we detected 300 of them?" "Yes, Commander." Zara made her decision quickly. "All ships prepare for faster-than-light jump. We're leaving." "But Commander," her second-in-command protested, "our mission was to investigate. The High Council will demand answers, and I will provide them. I will report that this system is protected by an unknown, powerful civilization, that attacking would result in the loss of our entire fleet, that the first fleet was likely destroyed by these protectors." Zara stood up. "I am not throwing away 200 ships and thousands of lives because of pride. We leave. Now." The Zolthron fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel within 20 minutes. They left the solar system, carrying with them a story about mysterious protectors and impossible weapons. In the NORAD command center, cheers erupted as the alien fleet disappeared from sensors. They had won without firing a single shot, but General Linda Hayes remained quiet. Danny Cooper's face appeared on her screen. "You look worried," he said. "We won by lying," Linda replied. "We pretended to be protected by someone else. What happens when they figure out the truth?" Danny smiled. "Linda, we didn't really lie. We are protected by someone else. We're protected by ourselves, by human creativity, by human intelligence, by our ability to adapt and improvise and survive. That's not a lie. That's exactly who we are." "The protectors are us," Linda said slowly. "Always have been. We just made the Zolthrons think we were something different. And here's the best part. The more they investigate, the more terrifying we become." Linda did not understand. "What do you mean?" "Think about it," Danny explained. "They're going to go back to their empire and research humans. And what will they find? A species that survived ice ages. A species that fought and killed its way to the top of its food chain. A species that discovered nuclear weapons and almost destroyed itself but somehow survived. A species that spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare." He leaned closer to the camera. "Linda, the truth about humanity is scarier than any lie we could tell. We are the thing that makes other species nervous." He was right, Linda realized. Humanity did not need to pretend to be dangerous. They were dangerous. 10,000 years of constant warfare had created a species that was very, very good at violence. 3 months later, a single Zolthron scout ship returned to the edge of the solar system. It stayed far away, just close enough to deploy long-range sensors. It scanned for 5 minutes, then fled. The scout's report reached the Zolthron High Council weeks later. The mysterious protectors were still there, still armed, still watching. Earth remained on the list of forbidden worlds. Too dangerous, too unknown, not worth the risk. Years passed. Humanity continued to build ships in secret. They developed new weapons. They expanded their hidden bases across the solar system. Not because they expected another attack, but because preparation had become part of their nature. General Linda Hayes retired and passed command to Admiral Karen Wells. On her last day, she stood in the observation deck of the lunar shipyard, watching construction crews work on a new warship. Colonel Jake Morrison, now a general himself, joined her. "Any regrets?" "Many," Linda admitted. "But not about what we did. Never about protecting Earth. The government wants to tell people the truth. Declassify what really happened." Linda shook her head. "Not yet, maybe never."